Yo guys, it's your boy Shady, the one and the only. So, Tommy Robinson exposes some dark truths about the UK that the media don't want you to know. It's all been swept under the carpet. So, let's watch this video guys and we'll talk about it. Let's get it started.
It started in Epping after a 38-year-old Ethiopian man was charged with sexual assault.
Tommy Robinson's resurgence is somewhat based upon people's acceptance that there is a statistical anomaly when it comes to Pakistani rape gangs and some confusion about why an inquiry was not undertaken earlier.
They
I'm telling you, the UK is getting wilder and wilder.
had allowed a rape of a generation of England's daughters in order to not be deemed racist. When people want to talk about political correctness and understand how powerful it is, it paralysed an entire nation's police force from protecting kids and allowing systematic abuse, torture and even murder.
Where is the passion coming for you to want to go up and do something about this?
Tommy's smart, though. I knew he had a story to tell that only he could tell.
If all these people had been doing their jobs, it wouldn't matter what Tommy Robinson had or had not said.
And I watched as parents.
Douglas Murray, as usual, very spot on with his commentary.
What Tommy Robinson had or had not said.
And I watched as parents stood outside the school and the jihadists have got their children in the school. And I can still see the mothers falling on their knees because as they started slaughtering the kids, the mums dropped to their knees. What is this? This isn't one mad man. This is a whole group of madmen. What is making these men do this act?
But who is for you now?
I have to say thank you to Elon Musk, because without X, if we didn't have X, everyone would just think I lied.
Now you can take me to court.
When I went to court, they said delete the film and we reduce your sentence. That's when I was in court. I'm not deleting the film. It's not getting deleted. Send me to jail, I'll go to jail, come out of jail. The Attorney General gives my solicitor the notification. If the film's still up when I walk out of jail, I go straight back to prison. I would be indefinitely prisoned. Indefinitely.
That is crazy. That is a proper madhouse, this country.
I'm a working class English lad from a town called Luton, which is 30 miles north of London. When I was born in 1982, Luton had one mosque, it now has 45. I've watched the troubles that come with the explosion in the demographic of an Islamic population. Just to make it clear, that's not to say that every Muslim is bad. It's not to say there's not some great, wonderful people within the Islamic community. What it is to say is that the more Islam is the less freedom. And what we see, and what I've witnessed with my own eyes, is the way the council, the police, the authorities, the establishment, everyone surrenders to Islam and to mob rule. The Islamic community are hostile. There's an aggression about them that other communities don't have. Luton, everyone in Luton are the sons of immigrants, pretty much. It's a very diverse town. Yeah? White English are a minority within the town. But per se, when you've come from somewhere like that, when you've had immigration from Jamaica, Ireland, Poland, Italy, St. Lucia, you can see and tell the story of how it does work and how it doesn't work. Now, what works is all the other communities pretty much integrated and assimilated. If you line my friends up, we're all the sons of immigrants and we all love each other. But one community within the town segregated itself and there was zero assimilation. And it's the Islamic community.
As you can see, he's clearly saying that immigration can work, diversity can work. But what is important is assimilation. When you integrate as part of a society, accepting the ways of a country, the culture, all right? Remembering you came in here and you need to adapt to the ways of the place. That will make it work. He's clearly said that. He's also clearly said, even though he's taking a very hard stance against a certain way of life, right? A certain minority, but not all are bad. But then there's a problem and he needs to call it out.
And it's not racist to say that. It's not extreme to say that. I'm just pointing out the reality of Islamic ghettos that have now been created in every town and city. And it's partly our own government's fault because they actually encouraged it. They said that all cultures are equal when they're not. They encourage these inward-looking communities to not integrate, not assimilate, no attempt really. And when you have the explosion of immigration that we had, there hasn't even really been an opportunity. You've got Muslims. There's been many interviews of Muslims in my hometown of Luton who said they've never met a non-Muslim. So they've grown up within an Islamic community. They don't come out of the Islamic community, and they don't meet anyone other than Muslims within the Islamic community.
They've never.
And then you couple that. So what people need to understand, what I saw growing up, even if I just go back to my school days, when you went to my school, you had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground, not the white and black. Just so people understand, whites and blacks are not divided in the UK, partly because all of our black immigration has come from Christian nations. We get on great. So in Luton, whites and blacks were like this. Yeah, everyone was like this. We had the Windrush generation. And there may have been some teething problems in the early days, but not for my generation. For my generation, we grew up loving each other and as friends and integrated and assimilated well. The problem was the Islamic community. You had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground. If there was a problem with a Muslim at school who got in a fight with a non-Muslim, 20 of them would jump one person. It was something that I'd never seen. So when we grew up, there were fights. Luton, so people can understand as well, Luton is rated the roughest town in Britain. It's a very poverty-stricken town with a high level of violence and criminality.
Yeah, true.
There's lots of problems in Luton. Even if you take Islam out, there's lots of problems.
I mean, like, when I first came to the UK, I knew about Luton. A lot of people warned me about going to Luton. My friends warned me. Okay, we had this chap that we knew that used to live there, but he was always spending his time out of Luton. Yeah, he himself has warned us about certain times of going to Luton, certain places, that it is rough. So I had always heard about Luton, but I didn't know that it was rough. Never ever knew. But now I'm getting an insight into this from Tommy's perspective.
It's a very poverty-stricken town with a high level of violence and criminality. So there's lots of problems in Luton. Even if you take Islam out, there's lots of problems. It's a very poor town.
Okay.
But growing up, I noticed something very different. I didn't really understand it. I just knew the Pakistani community was different. Now, many people across the world have now heard of grooming. I don't know why we call it grooming. It's jihad. It's where gangs of Islamic men target non-Muslim children. The majority, of course, are white, because the majority of young girls they're targeting in England were white girls. But they also target Sikh girls, black girls. They target Hindu girls. They target non-Muslims. They take those non-Muslim girls, they befriend them, they give them money, they buy them drugs, they buy them alcohol, they buy them cigarettes. And these girls go through a process which our government labelled as grooming, where they get them into a position where in the end they are gang by sometimes 10 men at a time, queues of men. There's been instances of queues of men outside doors going in one by one to the dirty gura, because that's what, if you go through the court cases like we have, the girls are called filthy white bitches, scum, kuffar. It's religious, it's racial, and it's targeted. And the problem is that what I saw growing up in Luton, in 2009, I started an organisation called the English Defence League. Yeah, the English Defence League was formed of young working class men who had had enough. And it started in Luton, and it spread like a phenomenon across the whole of the UK. Literally within 6 months, we had divisions, we called them divisions, in every single town and city. Now, we were young. I went from working on a building site to 6 months later leading the biggest protest movement Europe has seen. We were young, we were male, we were unhappy, and I guess you could say at times we were aggressive. And the reason being...
Yeah, I heard of the aggression. That part I did hear of it from the media, from people. So that was part of what was used to smear Tommy Robinson because of his inexperience, his rudeness. He was like a chav. He was crude, uncultured. He was just going out with raw energy without thinking of political correctness, without thinking of how he was coming across. Okay, he just had that passion for justice by any means.
We were young, we were male, we were unhappy, and I guess you could say at times we were aggressive. And the reason being, we'd seen a total failure of government and police to deal with any problems that come from the Islamic community. They smash our community with iron fists and they treat theirs with kid gloves. They're scared of it. And that's what we'd seen growing up. We'd seen all these problems. started an organisation. It grew, but what I realised then, when I started travelling the UK, my cousin was a victim of these grooming gangs at 14 years old. She was kidnapped, she was taken for days, she was raped. Now, for your listeners to understand, because this is going to sound unbelievable, literally, young children from the age of 11, 12, 13, they were taken for days, sometimes weeks. The families would ring the police. Our daughter's missing. The Muslim community have got her. She's being raped. And the police would take no action. And it wasn't just that they wouldn't take action. They actually conspired. Now, when I started talking about this, I first started talking in 2004. I held my first demonstration in Luton, but I didn't form an organisation till 2009 because I'd seen so many problems. And in the end, for us, enough was enough. We then made the rape of our daughters an international news story from 2009. When 10,000 young men, English men, were charging through cities, screaming about our kids being raped and our daughters and our nieces and our families being targeted, it could not be ignored anymore.
I mean, it gets to a point where enough is enough, where people get pushed to the wall, where they feel like, now is the time, to act, time to protest and say no, all right, raise awareness and then make the government act on this. These things he's saying here sound like a movie, sound very unreal, sounds very un-British. This is definitely not a British way. Okay, you would never expect that something like this will happen in the UK. Like, hearing something like this, I could easily say, well, apologies to all Americans, but you know how liberal America is. I could easily say it's more of an American thing to allow a lot of things, crazy stuff like this to go on. But in the United Kingdom, with all the culture, with all the Britishness, with all the politeness, wanting to do things right, having that class, to hear of things like this happening in the UK is almost unreal. Okay, it's almost unbelievable. Now, Tommy Robinson has had a very dark past. All right, he says it himself. He's confessed it many times. I've had the privilege of meeting the man when I went to cover one of the protests, well, a few of the protests, right? And he was decent. He talked about how he was before, how he was so raw, so crude. He didn't know how to express himself. He was just unfiltered, okay? But growing up, he's been through a lot of changes. He's fixing up. All right, he's finding the right way to put his message across so it won't fall on deaf ears. The media has demonized him. All right, he's been painted as an enemy of the state. He's been arrested on many occasions. But how a lot of us found out the truth, found out that, silver lining was through X. Yeah, through Twitter, through X. And he said thanks to Elon Musk. And that's true. Twitter has done a lot, has exposed so many truths that the media would have easily swept under the rug, swept under the carpet. And I'm glad he's using this to also warn Australia. The thing is, rather than blaming the perpetrators, rather than blaming a rise in crime, right, on the criminals, yeah, I think the blame should go to the government for allowing it or for turning a blind eye. Because everywhere we go, there's crime. There's no perfect country. Nigeria, there's crime. America, there's crime. India, there's crime. UK, there's crime. Talk about it. Russia, Japan, Indonesia, everywhere there is crime. Okay, it is part of human nature. But then you need the strong arm of the law to stop it, to crack down on it. So the failures here, if you ask me, I'm not pointing fingers at the perpetrators directly, okay, even though they have a part to play, but the government needs to take a strong stance to protect its own people. And may this serve as a warning to everyone. If in any case the government turn a blind eye or the government are blaming, now it is down to the people to raise awareness. It is important to use peaceful means, all right? Peaceful means, so that there'll be more impact and the media can't just shut people down, can't just, demonize people like they demonized Tommy. All right, let's learn from Tommy. Tommy has learned from his past mistakes, okay? It's still really tough, because he's been smeared. Getting out of it will be a bit tricky, but he's working on it. And my prayer is that this issue in the UK gets resolved, because it's been going on for too long and we're seeing signs of it spreading across the world. Well, I must say this was really very eye-opening. Okay, people don't understand Tommy. All right, people just think he just rose up out of his love for racism, because he's been smeared a racist, you know, maybe he just loves being aggressive, he's just a bully. Okay, but there was a reason for his actions. There was a problem, and he believed he was the man for it. He stepped up, and because of him, the whole of the UK know about this problem. But now, what will the government do? Anyway, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what's really happening in Luton, Bradford, Rotherham, the UK as a whole. And I pray you learn from the mistakes of this country.